If you put a Jones bar on a pre-existing bike, will it all of a sudden ride like a Jones bike? Well, kind of. Like I alluded to in my Jones bike review video, really stoked on the bike, really stoked on the bars, and it inspired me to buy a set of bars of my own and see if I can Jones-ify my Salsa El Mariachi so it rides more like the complete Jones bike. The Jones bar is actually a little bit on the finicky side to fit the way it was intended to fit as per Jeff Jones. Actually used to have an Ogre, and this is before the Jones bars were OEM on the Ogre. I put those on and it never rode quite right, but in retrospect, I was setting them up incorrectly. So the first thing to note is the placement of the brake levers. When I initially got the Jones bar on that Ogre, I put it so that my primary position was in the back of the handlebars, and that's actually kind of incorrect. Your primary position, the position that you want to be in about 80% of the time, you want that set up so that the brake levers are choked up near the joint. So usually what that means is if you're starting off with a longer stem, let's say 80 or even 100, and you have a flat bar, since the Jones bars move backwards, you actually want to shorten your stem, because if you use the same length stem, then it's going to put you way far in front of how the bars were intended to be used. Another thing that's kind of unique about the Jones bike, which is kind of hard to emulate on a stock bike, is generally how upright you're supposed to be sitting. The swept back bars will aid in that. It will force you to be in a more upright position, but lots of mountain bikes, especially cross-country bikes, tend to have a really low stack. So if you put a Jones bike on a bike like that, you're not getting kind of the intended height that you're supposed to get. So to kind of solve this problem, there's actually a couple versions of the loop bar. This one has about 2.5 inches of rise to it. So compared to the regular Jones bar, which is kind of like exists in a flat plane, this is the rise version, so that it actually allows you to bring the handlebars up, especially if you've got lower stack on the bike or not enough spacers or what have you. And I figured it would be a safe bet to get the one with more rise, and if I had to lower it, I could always swap the spacers around. So that's the second thing. First thing, you'll need a shorter stem to bring the bars closer into you, and generally you're gonna have to bring it up a little bit higher than you would think. And of course, this works perfectly fine on the Jones Bike Complete because that's how it's intended to be ridden, putting less weight on the front so it keeps the steering nice and lively, in addition to the low trail fork design and all that other frame stuff. Another thing I added on the Jones Bike Complete that I'm testing that I didn't really get to talk about in the review video are these things called Togs. And they're basically these little rubber things that you can put anywhere on a flat bar. And what I found is in the on the Jones bike, I'd have the primary position, then my downhill position kind of further back on the sweep. But when things got windy or it was a long straight road, I really wanted to get a little bit more aero, but didn't want to lean my forearms across the top of the bars. So I wanted a position that would replicate being in the hoods, and that's what these little Togs do. It actually creates just enough resistance so you can comfortably rest your hands where you would if you were on a road bike on the hoods. It's actually fairly comfortable. I mean, it does take some dialing in, getting the angle just right and where exactly on the bars, but it creates a legitimate new hand position that you can ride in that I like to ride in long periods of time. So I've taken my Jones-ified Mariachi out on a couple of rides. Was it successful in emulating the feel of the Jones bike? Well, kind of. I would say it gets about 60 to 75% there. I do get the more upright position. I am moved further back, so if I'm going on the steep section, I don't feel like I'm going to be pitched over the handlebars, whereas it was set up a lot more aggressively than it is now. However, where the Jonesification fails, if you will, is in the front end geometry. One of the interesting things about the Jones bike is it was really precise steering. Like it would turn where I would want it to. And with the Mariachi, this is the size small, I would tend to overshoot the turns a lot. It just didn't feel as intuitive. I mean, granted, I am not the best mountain biker by far, and I could probably adjust to this bike and compensate, but with the Jones bike, it just felt really natural to just, it would turn and, I wouldn't overshoot the turn or anything. It just go where I wanted the bike to go. So the turning dynamics are not affected by the handlebars, unfortunately. So I still get the front end of the Mariachi and not of the Jones bike. Another thing I noticed between the two bikes, even with the same handlebars, is how it climbed on super steep stuff. On the Jones bike, I was able to climb fairly comfortably, putting my hands on this top part and then pushing the handlebars down. With the Mariachi, even with the bars, there are some times when things got really steep that just the angle of the bike would kind of almost buck me off backwards. And in order to climb super steep stuff, I'd have to have my chest like practically literally on the bars. So again, that is a function of the front end geometry, and by virtue of having the same handlebar won't really affect that. So those were the two most noticeable instances where the Jones-ification failed, if you will. But I'm not giving up. I've only had these bars on this bike for a couple weeks, so I'm going to ride it some more to hopefully adjust. But my conclusion so far is that it has improved the handling for me, but by virtue of having the Jones bar, it does not replicate the front end handling of the Jones bike as one would expect. If anything, it's really made me appreciate how different the front end geometry of the Jones bike is. To have a small frame with such a big tire and have nice, nimble, precise steering, and also keep the front end down on super steep stuff. So cool. I don't know what frame voodoo geometry is going on exactly, but it's a cool bike. So that's it for this Jones-ification part 1 of the Mariachi. Again, I'm gonna, these bars are mine. I bought them. I'm gonna be riding this for the next couple of weeks as weather permits, and I'll give you guys an update to see how it works. So do you guys have Jones bikes? Have you managed to set them up correctly, or does this just seem weird to you? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe. And if you found this video useful, hopefully interesting, consider supporting the channel via these links. Yay, bicycle fun times. And as always, keep the supple side down.